Hello, everyone. I wish I could see everyone's faces in person, but it's nice to be here virtually with you guys. So let's get started. First, I'm going to introduce each of the panelists. Let's start with Sophie Carroll, who's representing Dust. If Sophie wants to just say hi.
Hi.
We've got Bri Castellini from Seed&Spark.
Hello.
Hello, we've got Jason Sondhi from Short of the Week. And MarBelle from Director's Notes.
Hi.
Hello. I'm not sure we can see MarBelle yet, but there we go. We can hear you. Hey. All right, so let's just start off. I'd love for each of you to tell us a little bit about the company platform that you're representing and what that platform's mission statement is. So we can go in that same order: Sophie, Bri, Jason, and then MarBelle.
Awesome. All right, so hi guys, I'm Sophie Carroll. I'm the Senior Manager of Curation for Alter and Dust, which are Gunpowder and Sky labels in the horror and sci-fi realms, respectively. For Alter, our kind of aim is to explore the actual definition of horror, so fear, shock, and disgust rather than just scary. And with that, we love to see human horror that's talking about society. And with Dust, we always say that we love grounded sci-fi, so that's films that are perhaps 10 years in the future rather than 10,000 years in the future. It's kind of where we sit with sci-fi. And yeah, we post 5 films a week across our channels, and we are also working in feature, series, and podcast spaces.
Great, thanks, Sophie. Bri?
Yeah, so I am with Seed&Spark. We are a film crowdfunding and distribution and diversity and inclusion, a lot of things program. I primarily work in the crowdfunding and education spaces. So I manage all of the incoming crowdfunding campaigns and give feedback to each and every one. And I teach a number of our workshops, including our short form distribution workshop. So I'm really excited to be here. Our mission statement at Seed&Spark is to support creators wherever they are on their creative journey. And I'm excited to be one part of that journey for some of them.
And Bri, you're a filmmaker yourself as well, right? So you're kind of coming to the panel with your own experience.
Yes, I am also a filmmaker, and I've worked with a number of wonderful platforms, and I know a lot about a number of others from friends of mine, like Christina Rea, who was our head of education, has a film on Alter, which is very exciting. Yeah. It's a great film. You guys should definitely check it out, The Gaze.
That's great. Thank you, Bri. Jason?
Thanks, Emily. My name is Jason Sondhi. I am co-founder of Short of the Week. Short of the Week is a platform that I founded alongside Andrew Allen in 2007. It's a curatorial website that celebrates the best and greatest in short film across all genres and styles. And, what had been originally a very sort of audience-focused platform in terms of just celebrating great short films that we felt were criminally under known and underrepresented to casual film audiences has really sort of morphed more into a filmmaker first and a filmmaker centric platform. And our aim is to be the platform which the greatest filmmakers of the upcoming generation are launched. And so I'm very happy to be joining NFFTY today to be talking to all of you.
Thank you, Jason. MarBelle?
So yeah, I'm the co-founder of Director's Notes, which I founded with Rob Monday in 2006. And when we started off, we were a podcast, mainly a weekly podcast, but the ethos of the site has always remained the same, which is to basically find really interesting work, regardless of its length or genre, because we do from music videos through to feature dramas. On the site, and really dig into the filmmaking of it. So kind of our tagline that used to be a lot more front and center was the what, how, and why of independent filmmaking. So, identifying the work and then digging in with the filmmakers to discover how they created those pieces of work, hopefully so that they can pass on that knowledge to other filmmakers who, are inspired by the things that they see on Director's Notes.
That's great. Do you ever have filmmakers reference previous work that you've shared in the past?
Yeah, quite often, and I'm sure it's something we'll get into later, but quite often when filmmakers will reach out to us, the savvy ones will kind of reach back into our archives and say, oh, you're going to like my film because it reminds me it's similar to this film that you featured. So yeah, that happens quite regularly.
Gotcha. That must be pretty satisfying to see it perpetuating itself, the work
Yeah,
that you're
it's good.
doing.
It's always good when you kind of get confirmation that you're not just shouting out into the void with the work you're putting out, and that it's connected with people.
Right. And I think honestly, that's how I'm sure we all feel right now with all this Zooming and I think virtual festivals. It's really nice to actually be a part of some Zoom connectivity, because I think when you're just sharing stuff online, sometimes you don't know where it's going or how it's being received. So speaking of all that, before we get into some more specific questions, I'd love to just talk about what the different goals are for short filmmakers now when they're ready to put their films online. So I remember when I was first starting out, I knew that, okay, this film went through the festival circuit. I want it to be seen by people, but like, what's the point besides just getting a bunch of people to watch it? So maybe Bri, if you want to kick us off, just if you have any personal experience, and then I'd love to hear everyone else's perspectives, or like what a filmmaker could be aiming for in an online release.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think getting a lot of people to see it isn't necessarily a given. That's certainly a goal, finding an audience, because, depending on what goal you have with your short film, with your web series, whatever, it's going to change the way that you approach making it all the way through distributing it. So, when you're making distribution decisions, an audience is your goal, then like that is probably going to guide a lot of your choices. But other goals might be to get picked up for, feature length film, to sell it as a pilot and get a series made, to flex your skills and learn a new thing. Maybe your short film will be your directorial debut. And so, you'd love some accolades, but ultimately you're making it because you want to practice that particular skill. Sometimes it's simply a portfolio piece, and not all of these goals require like getting a lot of people to see it. Sometimes it's a matter of, if this is my goal, I just need the right people to see it. So even if I only have, 10 YouTube views, it doesn't matter, because those 10 were highly targeted and get me closer to whatever else I want. Certainly some people want to make money off of their shorts, but I think we could probably all collectively agree that's rare for short form content, especially because most of the ways you make money on the internet, you need like a lot of content, and shorts simply aren't that. So even if you get on like an Amazon or somewhere that pays like per view, one view of a 10-20 minute piece of content is inherently not as valuable as one view on a 60+ minute content, because mostly people pay a minute per view. So that's also something to consider. It's not impossible, but usually shorts that want to make money are a part of a larger strategy, maybe for a crowdfunding campaign for a feature, or as an anthology, and they have like a Patreon or something like that. So that was a lot of words, but point being, there's a lot of totally valid goals to have, and you should probably focus on one or two, especially for your first handful of shorts. Otherwise, you're going to get overwhelmed, and that's not going to be good for anyone, least of all you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe Sophie, you can talk about if people come to your platform for a specific genre and you are showing a specific genre of film. So maybe you can talk about kind of a more specific release like that.
Yeah, I mean, what Bri said was like perfect. I always tell the filmmakers to just know exactly what it is that they're actually looking for, and to like really have it nailed down, because being at 1,000 regional festivals isn't going to help you as much as people seeing your film online, where they can see it all the way around the world. But yeah, I mean, with horror and sci-fi in particular, Bri's point about them not making much money online rings true, because of the adpocalypse, as they called it on YouTube. You can't really advertise on horror, so you're not going to make much money on YouTube by posting a film there. More so on sci-fi, but still not much. So I tend to steer people away from hoping that they're going to make their budget back. It's unlikely to happen. The thing that might happen, and the thing that we always would love to happen, is that it gets seen by the right person. And with Alter and Dust, we've really strived for that. We've actually connected with CAA and Circle of Confusion, So they see all of the films that we sign. Every week I send them a thing of like, here's all the films we signed this week, so that they can see them, possibly get representation for the directors. So that's kind of where we help with the filmmakers there, to help with their careers.
That's amazing. That's such a great strategy for your filmmakers.
Yeah, we've had a couple sign. We had a film come out this month called Good Guy with a Gun, which I highly suggest everyone go check out. It's really good. But from the strength of that short, this guy had three shorts. He's now been signed to Circle of Confusion, and like, he is a filmmaker to watch. His name is Brian Keith Montgomery Jr. Check him out. He's amazing. But yeah, we've had
what a name too.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Sophie. Jason or MarBelle, do you have anything you'd like to add to what you think some of the filmmakers on your platform are prioritizing or looking for when they share work with you?
I would say that, you know, we actually ran a survey about 2 years ago where we asked this exact same question to about 15, I think we had about 1,500 filmmakers that responded to us. And overwhelmingly, the number one thing that they were looking for with their short film was simply to connect with audiences. They wanted it to be seen. They wanted to get feedback. They wanted the validation of knowing that people were connecting with their creative vision. I think that's why a lot of people get into this craft in the first place, is to entertain, to challenge, to connect. And so that made a lot of sense. Right up there at the number 2 priority was to meaningfully advance their career, to create opportunities for what the next thing was. And that was gratifying. It was good to see, because of what you said, Bri, and what you seconded, Sophie. There's not a lot of money or long-term career potential in shorts. And so if you are looking to have a long career in film, you want to be thinking about, what is the next play? Is it to break into commercial directing? Is it to find collaborators to get a Sundance Indie feature? Is it to jump to television? We're seeing a lot of short filmmakers who are jumping into writers' rooms during our sort of golden age of TV boom. So that was overwhelmingly the second priority, with the third way far down being looking for financial recompense. So I think specifically for Short of the Week, you know, what we've tried to do is keep a very high quality bar. And so additionally, you know, they're looking to be exposed to both general audiences and the right audiences, like you mentioned, Sophie. But they are, you know, there's a certain degree of validation that comes from being part of a collection that, you know, is well respected. And lastly, I think, you know, through our sort of educational resources, some of the articles that we've put out, through the fact that we've been on the internet for 13 years doing this, they're looking for advice and for education, someone to potentially test their plan or fill in holes that could potentially be in their plan, and kind of let them know what best practices are. So we hope to try to fill that for the filmmakers that we accept into our platform as well.
I think for us, one of the things that we hear from our filmmakers is, you know, they were inspired to submit their films to us because of the work that they saw on there. So similar to what Jason said, you know, I suppose that feeling of being among their peers and the people whose work that they have admired for a long time. But then also, because we've always been interview focused, going from the podcast to our daily interviews that we do now, I think coming to director's notes, it gives them the opportunity to really talk about their craft and talk about, because I suppose, you know, you can see a film online, you can be impressed with it, but you might not, especially if it's done well, be cognizant of the amount of work that goes into it. So one of the things that we try to do in our interviews is show how much work goes into these pieces of content that we all really enjoy, and the filmmakers that come to us, they get to tell their stories and they get to kind of share their battles and their triumphs that ended up in the work that you see before you that has, you know, taken your breath away. So I think those, along with what's been said before, that's kind of where we come at it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I know that for both director's notes and short of the week, I think that the piece of writing that goes along with sharing the film is really valuable. I know like having worked on both of those platforms personally, that was really meaningful to me to see someone else write about my work, because also short filmmakers don't typically get a lot of reviews written unless you make the mistake of going on to, oh gosh, now I'm blanking on the name. What's it called? What'd you say?
Letterboxd.
Exactly, Letterboxd, and you read those reviews, which don't do that. But if you have a professional write the reviews, I think it can be really satisfying and really validating, like you're saying. Do either of you want to just talk a little bit more about that process? And MarBelle, you just discussed the interview a little bit and talking about wanting to, you know, highlight all the work that goes into it. And then Jason, your site, Short of the Week, is a little bit more like a review as opposed to an interview. So is there something you try to focus on, or does it kind of shift film to film how you approach writing about it?
It shifts film to film. So, you know, I think one of the things that I always say to new writers at Director's Notes is the thing that makes me happiest is if I find an existing interview for the film, because then it gives us the opportunity to ask all the follow-up questions that the original interviewer didn't get to ask. So we always want to dig into the specifics of that film. So this kind of goes into our approach to curation. Is there are some films that get submitted to us or that we see on the festival circuit that we absolutely adore, but the filmmaking process of it, there isn't anything really interesting that grabs us about the filmmaking process. And because our process is, I suppose, kind of labor intensive in that, you know, the interviews have to be written and then sent to the filmmaker and then sent back and then follow-up questions. We only really pursue articles or interviews with films where there's something about the filmmaking process that we find interesting, as opposed to, well, that was a fun story that we enjoyed, really. So it's important to us that that's an element that we pick out. And the way that we also assign our work to our various writers is we don't assign it as such. We kind of throw it out to the pool to see who bonds with a film. So we never want somebody to be going in to do an interview who's feeling like, oh, this is work, I need to do this. It always has to come from that place of excitement for us, which then leads to specific questions and interesting questions, I feel.
Great. And Jason, would you like to chime in?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when filmmakers are accepted on the platform, we have a kind of form that they fill out, which has a few basic Q&A questions to help surface interesting ideas or, you know, motivations behind the creation of the film, challenges that they had to surmount. And oftentimes that will get woven into a review. But, you know, in contrast to director's notes, we are a little bit more at a remove. They are more reviews, and we like the idea of being able to speak with a certain degree of, you know, assumed authority. And though that said, you know, our team by and large are not professional writers. They're not people who came to Short of the Week because they were into film criticism. We've largely and had most successfully recruited enthusiasts, people that I found on Vimeo who were commenting on every single, you know, film that was popping up in my feed, people who had immense capacity to watch, not because it was their job, not because they thought there was anything out of it, but they just had a sheer love for the medium. And I like that kind of personal voice to come through. I don't want people on my team to feel like they need to hide behind a sort of company voice. I want them to be able to express their own voice and express their own enthusiasm and their own quirks in the writing. And it's been a really gratifying experience, no doubt. And it's one of the things that you mentioned, Emily, that we hear a lot back from the filmmakers is something that they really do very much appreciate, simply because of what you said. There's very few opportunities as a short film creator to have someone try to engage critically and thoughtfully with your work. And honestly, that was one of the main motivating factors behind the creation of the site was, my partner and I, we loved short film, and we didn't understand why more people didn't love short film. And we thought, there's no Roger Ebert of short film. There's nobody who is serving as a guide, who's contextualizing the history, who's able to be, a friendly but authoritative voice that people can trust. And we wanted to hopefully create that.
That's wonderful. So I wanted to talk about, I think similarly to when you're submitting films to festivals, when you're submitting films or putting your film out there for distribution, whatever that might look like, I think there's a lot of rejection as well as acceptance. And that doesn't necessarily mean that your film is bad, but everyone kind of looks for different things, distribution platforms included. So I'd love to hear from each of you, like what you specifically look for and what makes or breaks a film being shared on your platform. And I know, Sophie, you've touched on this a little bit, and obviously, again, yours is genre specific, but we'd love to hear more from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, obviously it needs to fit the genres that we showcase, and we don't show every single horror film. Like, it has to fit our very specific filter. Same with Dust for Sci-Fi. Our filters are ever evolving. We do regularly come back to them. But yeah, so that's kind of how we choose them. But one of the main things that is really important to us is that we kind of think of Alter and Dust as talent incubators. They're places where we find these people very early on in their career. And if I was to see a short that maybe doesn't exactly fit the filter, but is so outstanding, I can just see the filmmaking that's gone behind it, we're more likely to bend the filter a bit just to fit that person in. So yeah, it really is just a matter of matching what we're looking for content-wise and just being, a great filmmaker, which everyone hopes they can be, but that is what we're looking for. Yeah,
and a follow-up to that is, what is your submission process like? And do you have a submission process? Do you solicit films? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So we have films coming in from every direction all the time. We have a free submission portal where you can just submit through our website. Obviously that one is very busy. There's a lot of films on there. So if you want to get your film seen more quicker, it's better to get a warm referral, have someone that that knows me refer it in. And we also obviously attend all of the festivals to find the great content. So yeah, it's a mix of cold submissions, warm submissions, and going to every festival, which luckily this year all of the horror ones got put into October. So it's been a very fun month for me.
Thanks, Sophie. Bri, I know that Seed&Spark, is a different type of platform. It covers a lot of things, but do you want to talk about, is there any curating of the films that you allow on the platform, and what does that look like?
So yeah, like I said, so I'm not on the distribution team. It is curatorial, the streaming platform, which we're not really emphasizing anymore. But our Film Forward program, which is our workplace inclusion program that connects social impact short films with corporations who need a D&I process for the year. So for that platform, I know that we seek out specifically short films that are dealing with a very clear-cut, concrete, social issue. And pairing that with a curriculum to work through with a workplace so that they can think more deeply about, their own workplace diversity and inclusion efforts. So that we don't have a ton of films coming through that pipeline, obviously, because it's very, very specific, but those who do come through, all of them are considered for can we build a curriculum out of this to make America's workforce think more deeply about the other parts of America's workforce. But yeah, that's all I can really say, because again, I'm on the filmmaker educator side, so I have a lot of thoughts about what filmmakers should be looking for in a distributor, but not necessary. I'll go at the end. I think it's best if I go at the end, because I want to hear what MarBelle and Jason are looking for in films first.
Yeah, pass to MarBelle.
Well, I suppose, the easy answer is, something you've never seen before, which is, also that's probably the hardest thing for anybody to do, really. It doesn't really help anybody. But I think for me, it's that shareable feel. If I get that feeling when I watch a film that I instantly want to talk to the rest of the team about it, and I really want to share it, and I'm kind of really, excited that we might be the first ones to put it out there. That's the thing that I want to have with the films. But then also it's people who have taken, I think for me, personal stories, and it doesn't necessarily means it has to be a story about them, but so an issue that they're really passionate about or interested about, because for me they seem to always be a lot more universal, as opposed to if you set out to say to create something universal that then doesn't appeal to anybody. It's these personal stories to me that will kind of floor me, and will, just by their very nature, give you that different perspective, because it's coming from that viewpoint that only you could have with your experiences in life. And I think that that is a really good approach towards the story that you want to tell it and connecting with an audience. So looking for films that do that is something that we always do. But then also, because we cover a whole range of moving image, so we do music video, we do experimental, we do dance films, where the narrative might not be so apparent, it is that kind of that factor of technical excellence, of the way that you've used the various tools of production to create the thing that you wanted to create and the final product, and also kind of interesting techniques, which aren't necessarily going to be expensive techniques, but an interesting way. And also as well, I think a thing that quite often comes across in our interviews is using the tools at hand to their maximum potential. So, not necessarily like going for your idea or crafting your idea around the tools that you have and maximizing them to the utmost to deliver the story that you want to tell, whether that's a visual flourish kind of story or a deeper kind of dramatic story.
Yeah, I think those are really great points, especially for short filmmakers, which, as we've mentioned, short filmmakers usually aren't flushed with cash. So what can you do with what you have, and how can you make that specific and therefore moving to people? Because I know that I think for young filmmakers, it's easy to get caught in a trap of what can I make that everyone's going to like? But that might turn out to be more watered down and boring than if you made something a little bit more specific that appealed to maybe a more specific audience, but that audience would then really love it. So yeah, that's cool to hear about that. And Jason.
Yeah, I'm gonna go rewind this when it's over and listen to MarBelle's response again, because I think there was a lot of great stuff in there. Our founding principle way back in 2007 was innovative storytelling. And unfortunately, both of those phrases have been sort of watered down into kind of pablum by, Silicon Valley or something like that. But yeah, I still, there's still the lodestars that we kind of try to align ourselves by. So storytelling, that's very flexible. So, we feature documentaries, we feature animations, narrative, live action. We'll even feature experimental work. But there needs to be strong storytelling, because we just believe strongly that stories are how we as human beings make sense of the world and make sense of each other. And so therefore, even in more kind of purely visual work, we want to see arcs, we want to see emotional journeys, even if it's not sort of a classical 3-act story structure. And then innovative, we want to see something new, we want to see something fresh that we haven't seen before. And now everybody says that, but I think it's especially important in short film, because you are working with so many limitations. You don't have endless budgets, you don't have you often are dealing with amateurs at various sort of key positions. And so the freshness of that voice is that much more important in standing out. And the other reason is we feel strongly that that's sort of the point of short film. Like, having curated for 13 years, so often the visual ideas that are shaping culture in big mainstream ways are things that I've seen filter through short form media. And when you get higher up that ladder and there's bigger budgets and more responsibility, there's all these sort of things that try to water down your personal vision. But in short film, it's a sandbox. There's a lot of freedom, you know, there's not a lot of resources, but, you know, paradoxically, that provides you a lot of freedom. And if you're not using that freedom to try to do new things, to take risks, then sort of it's what is kind of the point. And so, you know, I'm sure you can go through our selections and find, you know, contrary examples that you can throw in my face, but very much, you know, my personal passion and what I've tried to extend to the team is to support people who are taking big swings and who are challenging, and stay away from staid 25-minute, you know, very nice classical dramas that are like things that you've seen before in many other mediums and other modes, and really try to celebrate the weird and the different. And the other thing is you know, being innovative is not just about formal technique, and it's not about even story topics or premises. You can be innovative by telling familiar stories from different perspectives. So if you are a person and you're bringing in that personal perspective that maybe is outside of the mainstream in the US or in Western Europe, which are kind of key demos for audience, you can tell a familiar story, but if you're telling it from a different perspective or through the eyes of characters who are diverse, that in itself can be innovative to an audience. So.
Right. I think that's a good segue to a last question I want to ask you all before we get to some audience questions, which, Bri, I'll have you start this off from your perspective as a filmmaker and also from your Seed&Spark. But as some form of gatekeepers in this industry, I think we all understand how important it is to represent underrepresented voices and give screen time to marginalized filmmakers. So, Bri, what do you look for? What should a filmmaker look for in sharing their film on a platform? And then what do you think Seed&Spark's responsibility is, or what are they doing to, you know, amplify those voices?
Totally. Yeah. So I think that the first thing that everyone who's like watching this panel has a short film, wants to make a short film and is thinking about distribution is, what are you looking to get out of distribution? Because I think the secret that most people maybe won't admit to themselves is that they just want the validation. And that's a totally valid reason to submit to a distributor, but it might not necessarily ladder up to your actual goals. And there's nothing unprofessional about having a great short film on Vimeo or in YouTube. So don't discount it just because you're like, oh, well, everyone's on YouTube. It's like, yeah, but everyone's on YouTube. It'll be very easy for people to watch. But if you're going to be talking to actual distributors with platforms, with curation, I think there are a couple of things that you really need to keep in mind before you sign anything. One question really quickly though, for the rest of my panel friends here, are your platforms exclusive? Can you speak to that really quickly? Because I will have thoughts about how filmmakers should navigate that, but I wanted to hear from you guys what your exclusivity clause is, if you have one.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Sophie.
Thanks. On Alter and Dust, our agreements are non-exclusive. We do have some where we do 1 month exclusives and then it reverts to a non-exclusive.
Yeah, our answer is very simple. We have no exclusivity whatsoever.
Oh, MarBelle,
you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, same here. Yeah, we've never had exclusivity on director's notes.
Great. So that's something to think about.
I just want to interrupt real quick and just clarify that exclusivity means that your short can only exist on that platform at a time. That would be an exclusive agreement, whereas non-exclusive, you could be on multiple platforms at once.
Yeah, so that was what I was just going to say, because I think that's something that I don't think filmmakers think about and is sometimes just in contracts and they don't really look at it until later. So definitely read your contracts, everyone, first of all. Also understand, you know, if there are like layers to the exclusivity. So like Seed&Spark streaming platform is non-exclusive as long as the other places that your film is not free to view. So you can't be on YouTube and Seed&Spark, but you can be on, say, Amazon Prime and Seed&Spark, or, you know, any paid per view platform and Seed&Spark. So like, that's something to consider if you want your film to be freely available for some of your audience, but also streaming with a platform with that kind of a contract. That doesn't ladder up with your goals. So maybe that distributor isn't for you. It might feel nice to be accepted by them and be a part of the platform. But ultimately, if your goal is to get in front of as many people as possible, an exclusivity contract can be really damaging to you and your ability to reach that goal. So with that in mind, especially if a platform is asking for exclusivity, and even when it's not, the kind of 4 main considerations that we talk to filmmakers about when deciding whether or not to sign with a particular distributor are audience, marketing, data, and revenue. And unless you have 2 of those that go in your favor, definitely don't sign a fully exclusive contract, because it's not worth it. So on the audience side of that, is there an existing audience on this platform? You know, there's a bunch of wonderful distributors, but each one has a very distinct audience. And some of them are newer and might not have that. And they may be expecting you to bring the audience. So if you're looking for audience from your distributor, you need to actually pay attention to who already has, you know, an account on this platform, if it happens to be somewhere else, or, you know, and like I know Alter posts to YouTube. So you can literally see who is the Alter audience. Are there people watching their films? Are they people who I think would like my films? Things like that. So like knowing who and if they have an audience is a really important first step. Second, marketing. Is the platform going to market your work? Are they going to do it past the first time it's included? Like, how often do they promote the things within their library? If it's going to be a one and done thing, which happens, that's something to know. And if you were hoping that they were going to help you, you know, get the word out, you better hope your launch day is really, really impressive, because if the platform is not going to be interested in, you know, continuously promoting, well, hey, maybe that's not what you're looking for, or maybe it is, and that's totally fine too, but worth paying attention to. Do I think this platform is going to keep talking about me, even if I do get accepted to their library? Third, data. Data is really important to you, especially as a short filmmaker, because most of your value, like with the work that you're making right now and putting it out there, is being able to understand what's happening with it and communicating that up the ladder. So to investors for future projects, for marketing campaigns for future crowdfunding, or just general distribution, like who is watching your content? How much are they watching your content? Can you see how long they're watching it for? Like, are you able to determine, was it worth being on this platform? Can I see how it's doing? And can you share any demographic information so that I know the next time I make something, who I should be reaching out to when, you know, I'm looking to share it and things like that. Not all platforms offer data, but, you know, if they give you marketing and audience, maybe that's worth the, you know, you know what I'm saying here, it's priorities, right? So like, make sure that you're prioritizing right. And so then the final part is revenue. Again, we've all talked about it. Very rare that revenue happens, but if there is some kind of revenue promise, whether, excuse me, whether that's an upfront like acquisition fee or a revenue share, what is it? How well are other filmmakers doing on that platform if it's a revenue share? Something that I think people don't do enough in the indie film world is talk to each other. Talk to each other. If you see another filmmaker's work on a platform that you're considering either signing with or even submitting to at all, reach out to them. Most filmmakers are happy to talk about their experience and just ask them, hey, are you happy with your distribution? Like, can I ask you a couple of questions? And you might not get a response every time, but you never know. So like, talk to one another, share each other's experiences. And remember that getting distribution from a curated platform is always going to be up to the curators. And even if your film is wonderful, like we've all said today, it might not be right for their platform. In the same way that when you're not accepted to a film festival, it doesn't mean that your film isn't good. It just means that the programming needs of that festival simply weren't met by your film. And that doesn't mean anything about quality. It just means that for the thing that they're doing, which might be textual and might be subtextual, and it might be totally unconscious or conscious, it maybe isn't right for it. So knowing what you want out of your film is going to be very helpful, because in a lot of cases, you may not need a distributor or solely a distributor to depend on. Maybe you just need yourself and a really strong outreach plan. So those are the sort of things that we talk about, but definitely don't sign an exclusive agreement unless they can give you at least 2 of those considerations. Otherwise, you're going to kind of be stuck and won't be able to do anything with that film.
That was very helpful. Thank you, Bri. I think those are 4 really great key points to consider when you're considering your distribution plan. And you kind of answered a question that someone has had. So I'm going to past kind of what Bri just said, I'd love to hear from each of you those 4 points of your website, audience, data, marketing, and revenue, if that exists, but also to throw in there an audience question. So I'm going to ask, what recommendations / advice do you have for using social media marketing to get post-festival attention? So that kind of ties into the marketing bit. Love to hear from each of you. Maybe Sophie, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that Bruce said that I thought was really interesting was the data point. We don't get nearly enough of the filmmakers asking me for information, analytics about the release of their film. They see the number of the thing and that's it. And I'm like, sometimes we have someone reach out and be like, what was the gender split? Like, what countries were they in? And I will give you that information, but they don't ask for it. So if they don't ask, I'm too busy to tell. So hopefully more people will reach out if they hear this. So yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to look at the data. I mean, for Alta, we're kind of a 50-50 across all of our videos. We're about 50-50 gender split. Dust, we've got more men than women. And it's always very interesting to look at that. When it comes to marketing, obviously we promote the film a lot for its initial release. But my colleague Levi, who is like a wizard for the back end of YouTube and Facebook, he's really, really good at optimizing after a film has come out. He does a lot of A/B testing on thumbnails to see which one's more likely to be clicked on, updating all the tags and stuff. If something relevant happens in pop culture now, to a short that we released a couple of months ago, update that tag and maybe it'll pop up. Like I don't know how his brain works, but it's very amazing seeing him do that. So yeah, those are kind of things that we do. I know that you also asked Emily about like how we help support sort of marginalized groups and everything, and
yeah.
And that's really important to me on Alta and Dust. We've done female showcases, female director showcases. Roses Are Dead was the horror one, and Future is Female was the Dust one. We try our best to like feature as much LGBTQ+ content and content from people of color. Part of that also is making sure we moderate those comments real hard when we release those sorts of films. I have a lot of blacklisted words on our YouTube account so that horrible stuff cannot make its way into the comments, because I don't want the filmmakers to have to see that. It's not nice and it's not constructive and it's just horrible. So we really try hard to make sure that doesn't happen. And another thing that we do, I hired a bunch of freelance curators that speak a bunch of languages I don't speak, so that we can get content from other countries. For filmmakers that the language barrier would be too difficult to like discuss even what Alta and Dust is, they can do that. So yeah, we try a bunch of different ways to get as much as we can and support many different groups.
That's great. And speaking of different languages, do you offer closed captions on the films, or do you encourage filmmakers to offer that?
Yes, and more so than ever, we have been recently. We've always asked for them. They've not always been supplied, but we are really pushing to get more closed captions now. Especially, we started seeing more and more comments from people saying that they were deaf and that they couldn't understand what was happening. And yeah, so I don't want to hurt the experience for anyone of enjoying the film. So we have been asking more and more to get those subtitles. And we actually are looking at the moment to try and look into a way to get them for when we don't have them. But yeah, so that's kind of what we're doing at the moment.
Just a quick pro tip for filmmakers: even if you're not going to ultimately post your video, your short film to YouTube, YouTube has a really, really great caption building program that they've updated recently, so it's much easier to use now. And you can just upload like a private video, insert the subtitles the way that they do, and the auto subtitles are usually pretty good. You just need to edit those, and then you can export that in 3 different file formats, which can help if you want to put your film on Amazon. If you want to submit it to a platform, they'll just let you know what file type they need, and you will just like have that available to you. So it's actually very easy to do yourself, and very calming. It, reminds you of all the funny little things that are happening on screen that maybe you didn't think about because you weren't thinking about audio, but it's like incomprehensible grumbles are always fun to put in captioning.
That's great, Bri. And is that service free?
Yeah, it's just on YouTube. So when you put your video on YouTube, you can, there's like a subtitles like option when you're in the editing field of like putting in the thumbnail and everything. And they just have like a little pop-up of how to edit the captions.
That's wonderful to know, because I know that everyone, a lot of people I know use Rev, which is a great service, but you do pay a small fee. I think it's something like, I don't know, 50 cents a minute or I don't know. It's small, but that's great that there's one that's free completely.
Yeah, depending on how slang heavy your content is. I've always found it easier to just do it myself. But yeah, especially when you're working in longer form, there's a lot of great subtitle companies out there and freelancers who will do it for you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Bri. Jason, do you want to touch on some of what we have up in the air, marketing, audience, inclusion?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's maybe 2 or 3 topics up in the air currently. Do you want to pick one for me?
Let's hear about social media marketing, the
Sure.
audience question.
I will. So it's very important. Social media kind of ate the open web. And I think sites like MarBelle's, like ours, to a certain extent suffered. Even platforms like Vimeo suffered, as so much of, what we olds, maybe you nifty filmmakers don't remember this because you're by nature very young, but sort of the magic of individual blogs and websites has really been sucked up and subsumed into social media platforms. And they are, by and large, the biggest drivers of traffic and awareness to films. If you consider YouTube a social media platform, which in many ways I do, it is the biggest driver. The keys are to have a strategy. Like most everything, have a strategy. Enlist your cast, enlist your crew, enlist your close personal network, and coordinate. Everything that is algorithmic is running on complicated parameters, but the basics of them are not too difficult to find. So temporality is one. So if you post something and it gets a lot of engagement immediately, a lot of likes, a lot of shares, a lot of retweets, a lot of thumbs up or what have you, those are all inputs that are going to tell the platform that there's engaged interest in this, in which case it might trigger it to be exposed to wider audiences outside of your network. So that's first and foremost, is to have a plan and to recruit a bunch of people that you already have pre-existing relationships with to execute that plan. To remember, a lot of filmmakers are very shy about their use of social media. They'll maybe post 1 or 2 times. Remember that if somebody is following you, they're following you because they either like you or they respect you as a creator. They want to see you succeed. You're not putting out a film every week, usually. So the appetite of your followers to take your self-promotion is way higher than any filmmaker I've ever talked to imagines it. So feel free to spam in that immediate week window that you're doing a release, and don't worry about it. People will forgive you. And then lastly, paid is an option. The platforms are very much trying to push that. That is their reason to be. That's why they're the most powerful corporations on the planet, is because a lot of people pay for distribution. And, do your research. There's a lot of great guides out there on the internet. There's a lot of great filmmakers. Jim Cummings is one who has published a lot of great guides or resources explaining his use of Facebook advertising and various other platform advertising. It's not something that we at Short of the Week have a ton of experience with, but if you're releasing with us and it's something that you are interested in pursuing, we can share what kind of small knowledge that we know. Or it can be a little bit complicated in terms of the parameters that you want to be thinking about. So I won't waste time there, but maybe we're going to write an article about it sometime in the next 2 to 10 weeks or so. So hopefully I can share more with you then.
Thank you. And MarBelle, do you want to add anything about director's notes marketing strategy, or what you'd encourage filmmakers marketing strategy to be?
I mean, I think anything I say would just pretty much be repeating what Jason said about, kind of, you need your initial immediate crowd on your side at once. I mean, I think a mistake, it wasn't quite the question you asked me, but I think a mistake that a lot of filmmakers make is they think that having their film on the platform is the end goal, and that's it. So quite often we will spend a lot of time chasing filmmakers for the materials that we want to use just on our own social media channels to promote their films. And they're materials that all filmmakers will have at hand, but not that many of them have them gathered and ready to go. And again, across all the various sizes, to make sure that they look as good as they do, as they possibly can across all the social media platforms, because they all do crop in a different way. So an image that might look amazing on Facebook will look, terrible on Twitter or on Instagram. So you need to create individual assets for all those different platforms. And as Jason said, seed that out to your crew, your family, your friends, and get them to share it and get them to retweet you and retweet each other. So you get that kind of critical mass that could therefore explode up elsewhere. But again, also one of the things that makes us the happiest in the world when we've got a filmmaker who's launching a film with us is when they kind of dump a Dropbox folder or a Google Drive folder with all these assets in there, with the videos and the trailer, and then here's trailer number 3 if you didn't like trailers 1 and 2, or because I have always got in my head the stupid idea that there's one poor person who's following us across all our social media platforms. And so we're always really paranoid about not having exactly the same message go out there. So it's really great for us when filmmakers come to us with all those materials that they varied, so that we can have a varied message to help push their films across all the different platforms.
Yeah, and
yeah, oh, sorry,
I just want
to
add to that point. I think it's really important, and I think that a lot of filmmakers seem to forget about or not realize is taking stills when you're shooting is really important. Please do it. Yeah, please do it. It helps immensely in the release, really helps in the promotion, and you can't go back and do it. You can take screen grabs from the finished film, from the edit, but it's not as good as taking stills at the time. So I'd really encourage that. Another one that hasn't come up in this conversation that I think is really useful is Reddit. Posting your film on Reddit. If it gets picked up, if people like it and it starts going up, you're going to get so many views from being on Reddit than being on other social media sites. There's specific subreddits for specific genres. There's specific subreddits for short films. You just got to really dig in there and find your community.
Yeah, I'll echo both of those statements from MarBelle and Sophie. And one of the things about Reddit too is, in my experience, what's really effective on Reddit as well is it's not something that can be outsourced to other sort of platforms or partners. Reddit is like a very human community, and what is most effective there is something very basic like, hey, I'm a filmmaker, I worked really hard on this, and I'd love it if you would take a look at it and let me know what you think. Those kind of posts often do very well on Reddit. Just a very sort of heartfelt and personal message. The other thing I would say too, we've talked about assets. You really should be thinking about, like a journalist, like a cultural gatekeeper, and be thinking about angles. I recommend to every film that comes onto our platform who is serious about promoting their work that you should come up with 3 angles that are hitting various kind of diverse communities and how you approach them, and then write sample headlines so that you can have that and you can share that with your community, your initial crew that's going to launch. What is enticing or appealing other than just saying, this is a short film about this, and look, it's on this platform, which lets you know that it's great, because that's not enough. You need to have something that's concise and witty and, not necessarily clickbaity, but, clickbait exists for a reason, and you should maybe study clickbait and think about what kind of things and techniques there that you can adopt. And, we can help you out a little bit with that. MarBelle can help you out a little bit with that. But kind of speaking off of something that Bri said, it's like, don't rely on the platform, don't rely on your partners to do this work for you. You need to be self-generated, and the more work that you put into it, the more success you're going to have.
Yeah, I just want to hop on because that was all really great advice. And something that I will say about Reddit is that it's more effective the more specific subreddit you get to. You know, if you know who your audience is, go to that audience. So like my short film did very well because I posted it to the asexuality Reddit because it's about an asexual character, which there aren't very many of. But something that I learned is that because Reddit is so human and because those more specific subreddits are so curated, if you just link spam, so if you just post your link and leave, even if it's a wonderful human message, they're going to delete it because that's just self-promotional material. So the best way to get around that, especially if you're in a hurry and don't have time to like dedicate the organic time to be a member of that community, which I would recommend, of course it takes longer, but it's far more effective, is to go through the moderators. And Reddit makes it very easy to find out who moderates that board and just send them a quick message like, hey, I'm a filmmaker. I made this film that I think your community is really going to love, you know, insert why there, make it very clear, like, I'm not just giving you this for no reason, like I think your community would like it. Would you mind posting about it if you watch it and like it? Because that's going to be the best thing. If the moderator, a trusted member of this community, is the one that posts the link, that's going to be hugely more popular than you, a random user. But sometimes they'll just say, oh, we won't remove it if you post it. Like, that seems nice. Maybe I'll comment on it or something. So that's the second best. But going through the moderator first makes them feel special, and they have a lot more credibility than you. And they can, A, make sure your post doesn't get removed, and B, sometimes like highlight it themselves, which is really beneficial. The other things that I will say really quickly, because I know we're coming towards the end, about incentivizing your team to promote, because I think that probably most film producers out there in the audience have had the woeful experience of, you know, it's been a couple of months since you've worked with your team because you've been hard at editing, and then the film comes out and like they've all moved on and none of them want to help. Relatable. It happens, you know, they've moved on. You've lived with this. So ways to incentivize your team and immediate network to share are A, personalizing the assets. So don't just give everyone like a cast photo. Because yeah, they're in that cast photo, but like your actors are trying to highlight their own performances. So make them a unique graphic of, you know, a screenshot of them or a still of them, and send that to them separately so that they have something that's uniquely theirs to share. This also not only like appeals to their narcissism, which, listen, all of us are narcissistic. I'm going to definitely share a picture of me over a picture of like a group where I'm kind of in there. Come on, I'm great. I want to just show me. But also it varies up the marketing material so that people aren't just saying the same thumbnail or key art over and over and over again. Like, you should have some kind of consistent branding, maybe a logo or a font choice or something, but giving people slightly different images also just benefits the overall visual aesthetic of when people see something. It's not always just like the same thing they've already filtered out. Also, final tip, pre-write your social media language. And you may even want to go as far as to pre-write it in other people's voices so that they don't have to think about it. Because if they can just copy and paste and like insert the image you've sent them, that's going to be way easier, and they're going to do it way earlier than if you're like, hey, can you post about the film, and just leave it to their, you know, advances. What if they get the link wrong? What if they put the wrong key art? What if they use the wrong hashtag or don't use the hashtag at all? Control it. If you want to have control over the aesthetic and the way that this goes out, put the work in, and people will thank you for it, because it's so much easier to do that than to come up with something new myself.
Yeah, I think these were all great points, and relate to the fact that, as I'm sure everyone who's watching knows, because you're at a festival right now, the film creative process doesn't end when you finish the film. It doesn't end when you finish the festival circuit either. This is still part of the creative process. And so having some foresight to this last step of the puzzle at the beginning, like everyone kind of mentioned, be aware of taking like fun behind the scenes photos as you're on set, and organize all your assets. Like everyone was saying, I've learned through the course of 5 short films, and now I've got my Google folder that has my trailer, my posters, my stills, my behind the scenes, your press kit. And it's a lot of work, but so is making the film. So if you've made it this far, you can make it to this next step. And just to quickly touch on, there was a question of, do you think producers should be building post-festival shelf life into their initial budgets? And if so, how do you suggest they go about that? I think we can kind of, I would just like to say myself, I think, again, it just depends on what your budget is. And oftentimes, if you're directing a short film, you're also producing it. Even if you have a producer, it's a passion project. So just be aware that you're going to have to be involved, I think, until the bitter end. But producers can be great to be involved as well. I think we're at the end of our time, but I don't know if everyone just wants to say a quick goodbye, and if you have any last valuable piece of information you'd like to shout out? We'll go reverse order. Let's start with MarBelle.
It was a pleasure to be here. Yeah, filmmakers, contact us early. That's what I would say. Contact us, and I'm pretty sure it's the same for Jason over at Short of the Week. The more time you give us, the more that we can do for your film, and the much better the article is going to be.
Yeah,
Thank you,
we
MarBelle.
we will program, or we will accept films, the minute they're done, even if they're not going to go online for months or even a year. And we want to see it first. And that's great for you insofar as that it helps you with your strategy, it helps you with your plan. I would encourage everybody to take a look at an article we wrote on Short of the Week called Be Everywhere All at Once. It aggregates a lot of our best practices and sort of philosophy and advice. So if you haven't taken a look at that, go Google it and search it out. And lastly, I just want to say thank you to Emily. This was great moderation. Thank you to Dan. Thank you to NFFTY. This was a pleasure to be involved.
I'm still muted. Thank you, Jason. Bri?
Sure. Yeah. Echoing what everyone said before, this was wonderful. Thanks so much for involving us and putting up with my very long, fast, talky rants. If you are interested in a long form sort of educational deep dive into short form distribution, we actually, Christina Ray and I did a live stream exclusively on short form distribution and all the things to think about in terms of festival strategy and who's out there, who's, working in short form content. And we also talk about our own experiences distributing our work, both on our own as well as with distributor partners. So if you just go to the Seed&Spark YouTube channel, you'll be able to find that. It's about an hour and 15 minutes long. Definitely worth a look if you're looking to learn a little bit more, as well as our just long form distribution workshop, which you can find future dates of on seedandspark.com/events. But that's all for me. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, Bri. And last but not least, Sophie.
Yeah, again, just everyone's kind of said it all. Thanks so much for having us. And like Jason and sorry, my brain just went blank, but like everyone said, please do send in your stuff as soon as you're ready to send it. We sometimes have filmmakers that have just finished their festival run and they want their film to come out right now, but we have a schedule and we have other filmmakers that have sent in their film before them. So it can't go out that quickly. So if you do get it in quicker, you can let us know. I'm going to finish my festival run in June 2021. Like, great, cool. I can program your film for July right now. That sort of thing is a lot better than coming in really last minute. But yeah, everyone's already said that. So yeah, thank you so much for having us.